And to talk now about the 2012 campaign for president and politics in general, we're joined now by former Congressman Tom Perriello, who is working for the Obama campaign in this election cycle. First, Congressman, we know you've been out of day-to-day politics for a little bit. Just kind of reintroduce yourself to our viewers and tell us what you're up to and exactly what your role is in the campaign this year.
Well, I had an amazing experience representing much of Central and Southern Virginia for a couple of years. Last year, I was mainly over in the Middle East studying Arab Spring and understanding what that might mean for American security. And now I work for a think tank here in town looking at policies that rebuild the American middle class and American competitiveness. And in some of my free time, I do help out with a little politics for the president and Mr. Kaine.
It's interesting that you talk about the middle class, because I know that's one of the things that the president is pushing this week. In particular, his campaign has been pretty critical of Governor Romney's tax plan, and they're calling it a huge increase, a potential increase on the middle class. Explain why you think that could happen.
Well, it's not the Obama campaign saying it. It's actually a think tank that Romney himself called an independent third-party think tank that he has cited repeatedly, that says that under Mitt Romney's plan, middle-class families will pay over $2,000 more in taxes, while Mitt Romney himself will get a $4.5 million tax cut. So this is an independent analysis by a group that was started by some of President Bush's economists and others that has said under Mitt Romney's plan, the middle class is asked to pay over $2,000 more in order to protect and even expand tax cuts for people at the highest end. This is really not what the middle class needs right now. You saw the same thing this week on Capitol Hill, where there was an opportunity to cover the tax cuts for 98% of Americans. The Senate had already passed it. All that was required for the House was to move on it, but Mr. Cantor and the leadership decided to kill that and hold the middle class tax cuts hostage. So whether you're looking at what's going on the Hill or in Mitt Romney's plan, it's really pretty devastating for the middle class.
Well, let's get back to Governor Romney's plan. Of course, there's a lot of holes that this independent analysis had to fill in because he hasn't revealed all the details. But essentially what they're saying is that in order to pay for the tax cuts that he is suggesting, that he's going to have to get rid of some deductions and loopholes. And this independent group then said that that was going to require big deductions to be taken away from average middle class families. But aren't we still taking a little bit of liberty by tacking this on to Governor Romney and saying that his plan is to raise taxes big time on the middle class?
Well, if anything, it's being generous to Mr. Romney. They actually went ahead and assumed a number of growth figures that many other economists think are not particularly realistic under the plan. Not a single independent group has been able to make Mitt Romney's numbers work. All of them so far are spelling disaster for the middle class. Think tank that I work with saw 18 million families getting hit particularly hard. We also saw that veterans' families are going to get hit under this analysis. And this isn't something where Mitt Romney is new on the block. He's been running for president for at least 5 or 6 years. He's had time to put together a plan. He's obviously hiding a lot of information about his own taxes and his tax proposal. But what I think middle-class families want to know is, what does this mean for me at the kitchen table? And this independent third-party group said it means $2,000 more in taxes under Mitt Romney's plan. President Obama was pushing bipartisan agreement that 98% of Americans would be protected at their current tax rates, as well as making college more affordable. So this is study after study that has really come to the same conclusion. The numbers don't add up, and the bill is going to get stuck with the middle class.
Well, let's talk about the president's tax plan as an extension. He's talked repeatedly about raising taxes on high earners, folks earning more than $250,000 a year. The Romney campaign has countered that this isn't just rich people that fall under this declaration. It's small business owners, it's farmers, it's other folks that wouldn't necessarily be described as wealthy. How would you argue that? And then as an extension to that, would it necessarily fill some of the revenue gaps that the federal government needs to start to get the debt under control? Would that alone be enough?
Well, actually, under the tax plan that had a chance to pass this week, if the House had passed it, everybody's getting a tax cut across the board, even the people in the top 2%. They're just not getting it on the marginal tax rate above $250,000. So that's still an $8,000 or $9,000 tax cut for people at the high end. The issue is one of priorities. During the budget negotiations last year, unfortunately, it came down to a choice where the Republicans were more interested in protecting millionaires than protecting the military, and now we have this sequestration issue out there. And it's a question of priorities when we decide about balancing the budget and about where we think growth comes from. Most small businesses, even ones that grow to that level, start out in a much more modest place. Where entrepreneurship can drive this competitive spirit. So I believe when we look at investments in education and innovation and infrastructure, which is really something we should be able to agree across the aisle, that's a smart growth strategy. And getting some economic relief to the middle class right now that's so often asked to pick up the tab, like under Mitt Romney's plan, isn't really the way to go.
All right, let's talk about the economy in general. And we got another jobs report out today, and there was enough for Democrats to look as positive, and there was enough for Republicans to look at as negative. The unemployment rate remains above that 8% mark, although the economy did add 160,000 jobs. Do you think that this is the kind of economic growth that the president can run on and show that he's made progress with some of his plans, or is it still too anemic for people to really feel comfortable about the direction the economy is heading?
Well, it's a heck of a lot better to be adding 160,000 jobs like we did this month than losing 740,000 jobs a month, which is what he inherited previously. But we want to see more robust economic growth. I think everybody wants to see that. And that's why he put forward a jobs bill last year. And the House is about to go on a 5-week recess without having acted on that bill. That's something that could put people to work tomorrow in things like infrastructure, which all of us around the Commonwealth know we desperately need. Construction jobs aren't Republican jobs or Democratic jobs. We can get back to building and making and growing things in America. I think one of the places you saw in these jobs numbers particular growth was in the auto industry. And here was a place where President Obama said, not on my watch. The American auto industry isn't going to die on our watch. Mitt Romney specifically came out and said they should go bankrupt. That's where a huge number of the manufacturing job growth is. So you had two people who are asking to lead, who took different approaches, one of whom helped lead a revival of the American auto industry that is incredibly robust right now and growing. And that's an exciting thing. And others who looked and said, maybe America's moment has passed. Maybe it's time for China to pick up that slack. These are tough choices when you want to be commander-in-chief and you want to be president of the United States. And I believe that with GM being alive and Osama bin Laden being dead, that's not a terrible record for the president to run on. But obviously, we want to see more growth as we go forward.
But Congressman, Republicans would argue that the president has made this promise before and invested billions of dollars into a stimulus plan with the promise that this unemployment rate would come down at a greater degree than it has. Why should then voters give the president the trust to continue on with ideas like you're talking about, with huge investments in infrastructure that at this point have shown a little bit of job growth, but not the big numbers the president initially had proposed?
Well, when you ask those Republicans when the camera's off whether we prevented a depression, they'll concede that we did, and that's no small feat. And if you ask why we haven't had more growth than then, you have to ask Eric Cantor and the Republicans, why have you stood in the way of common sense bipartisan legislation on infrastructure, on things that improve competitiveness, that kicked and screamed on something as simple as the Small Business Act to get relief to small business owners? These are the kind of obstructions from Congress that have gotten in the way of us being able to roll up our shirt sleeves and get things done. We know the American people are ready to do it. They're just asking for Congress to do its job and to stop taking these 5-week vacations without passing a jobs bill. So I think you have two very different visions. Under Mitt Romney's vision, you really see a doubling of the incentives to outsource jobs overseas. This is kind of crazy. He's basically saying, go build the jobs overseas and we'll make it tax-free, but if you build it here, we're going to raise taxes on your middle-class workers. That is not a strategy for competitiveness. And I think the president is putting a real plan out there and is willing to work with anyone who wants to help solve the problem.
All right, my last question for you, Congressman. It seems as though every time a seat comes open in the Commonwealth, one of the names that gets mentioned is Tom Perriello. Will Tom Perriello run for this seat? Are you considering at all at this point any kind of run, particularly for statewide office where there is an open slate for Democrats? You could run for Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, or Governor. Are you considering anything like that right now?
I think you got to really feel the passion to do it. Right now, my passion is the policy side. I want to help build the solutions, whoever wins, that can help rebuild the middle class and American competitiveness. And I'm excited to be contributing there and don't have any other plans at this time. Are you shutting the door on it completely, or is it just something that you're not interested in right now? Well, I aged a lot in office, but I'm still not that old. So we'll see what happens down the road, but I certainly am not looking in the near future. And maybe just expand on that quickly. I know we're running out of time. The difference between
policy and politics. Why is it that you prefer the policy side a little bit more? You feel that there's more opportunities to work together with people as opposed to just shouting at each other if you've got different letters at the end of your name?
You know, I think right now this Great Recession has really woken up elites in both parties that we actually haven't had the right answers, that we haven't had a strategy for rebuilding the American dream of social mobility that allowed my father to go from poverty into being an amazing pediatrician and seeing his son make it to Congress. That's the American dream, and it's become less and less real to people. And so I'm interested in the ideas, having worked all around the world, seeing those countries aren't waiting for us to get our act together, and I want us to build, make, and grow things here in America again. So the policy side, the ideas side has a lot of appeal to me, but it was also pretty exciting to get to represent people as part of the great democratic experiment that our founders envisioned. So both sides have an appeal, but you know, it has gotten so nasty. It does seem to be more about egos than getting things done. Hopefully in this election cycle, we can make it matter, whoever you vote for, that we can force the candidates to really put forward a plan for the economy and the middle class. I believe the president's been willing to be specific. Mitt Romney's hedged on that. I think if you don't have the courage to say it when you're running for office, you're sure not going to have the courage to see it through once you get elected. So I'm going to keep holding people's feet to the fire here and trying to make sure the middle class has a voice in Washington.
All right. Always an interesting conversation. Former Congressman Tom Perriello, we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.